My name is Jeff Biernaskie. I'm a professor of stem cell biology and regenerative medicine in the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine. I am the Calgary Firefighters Burn Treatment Society Chair in Skin Regeneration and Wound Healing. And I've been here since 2010. And the focus of my laboratory is really in understanding the mechanisms that underlie tissue regeneration. And so we study both skin and central nervous system repair and trying to understand why repair or why tissues don't regenerate and why we typically default to forming scar. I think early on, after starting our research program, we acknowledged that solving complex medical problems likely can't be done within the limits of a singular discipline. And so I think the best example of our interdisciplinary approach is in our approach to developing therapies for wound healing and skin regeneration. And the requirement to involve a variety of different complementary domains. And so, as a cell biologist, I had to really think about how I might be able to extend beyond the limits of my own expertise. And so the first step in that process was really getting a better handle on the disease that we were interested in, which was severe skin injury and burns. And getting a better handle on the perspective from both the patient and from the clinician that's tasked with treating these injuries. And so what we did was to forge a relationship with Dr. Vince Gabriel and Dr. Duncan Nickerson. So Vince is a physiatrist, and Dr. Nickerson is a reconstructive surgeon, both at the Calgary Firefighters Burn Treatment Center at Foothills Hospital. And they were very keen to get involved in research. And what this has allowed us to do is to really start to gain a better understanding of the challenges that they face in treating patients, but also to start engaging with patients that have suffered these severe burns or other cutaneous traumas, and understand what their daily life is like and what the challenges are that they face following these types of injuries. And more importantly, what they would prioritize in terms of making their lives better. And so this was really an important step. And by forging that relationship, we had a conduit into that knowledge and into that information. And so from that, we started to understand a little bit more about how we needed to prioritize our own activities in the laboratory. And so what we learned from the patients, for example, things like itch, when the primary treatment for a severe skin wound is a split thickness skin graft. It's where you transplant normal skin from one area of the body onto the wound site. And I just had no idea that there were complications like chronic itch or pain or stiffness within the graft that really act as impairments and immobilities that really diminish quality of life for these patients. And these are long-lasting permanent disabilities for the most part. And so once we had a handle on that, then we could start to think about how we would better address those problems with the things that we were doing in the laboratory. And so that was, really a key step for us, and that's really changed the way we do research in our laboratory at the basic science level, and how we think about developing treatments that we can translate into clinical application. The other thing that really enabled for us, in working with Dr. Nickerson and Dr. Gabriel, it also caught the attention of community partners who they had already partnered with, and that was the Calgary Firefighters Burn Treatment Society, who have been major supporters of clinical care here in Calgary, but their vision was really to try to enhance burn care, not just acute burn care, but in developing new treatments that will enhance people's lives, and maybe develop new treatments that could be brought online in the future. And so they really wanted to get involved in research. They heard about the partnership that we had in bridging clinical medicine and basic science, and they really wanted to help. And so, from that, they supported this chair that I now hold, which has been instrumental in allowing us to do things that we wouldn't normally be able to do, within our research program. It also allows us to disseminate our work very easily into the community as well. They've been fantastic partners in reaching out to the broader Calgary community to tell them about the work that we're doing. So it's been an incredible partnership on both within our clinical partnership, within the clinic, but also within the community, both with the firefighters and also with patients. So that's really been a huge benefit to this transdisciplinary approach. The other thing I would say is, we started to, as we were starting to develop therapies, both cell-based therapies and drugs, one of the challenges that we had was, how do we actually effectively evaluate whether a therapy is working or not? And so, using different animal models, we may be transplanting cells into a wound, or we might be applying a drug onto a wound. But how do we actually objectively tell whether this is having some benefit, some tangible, lasting benefit? And, in looking at the field, there was, there's sort of traditional ways of doing that. But one of the things that we thought about, and we're drawing on the information we collected from patients, was, things like stiffness, things like elasticity of the skin doesn't come back after you've got a scar. And so how do we evaluate whether a treatment is providing more elasticity to that healed wound? And so what we did was to reach out to our bioengineering colleagues in the Faculty of Engineering, people like Elena DiMartino and Michael Kalos, to start to ask whether we could take advantage of their expertise in tissue biomechanics to start to better evaluate these outcomes. And that's been really, really helpful for us, and really, I think, moved the field forward in terms of how we more effectively test different treatment effects. And so that's been a real plus, as well as thinking about how we might, when we talk about stem cells and cell therapies, one of the limitations to doing any of these things is growing up enough cells. So how do you get billions of cells generated from a patient in order to be able to transplant? Say you've got a 10% body surface injury, and you need to regrow skin for that site. That's going to take billions of cells. So how do you grow up enough of those cells in order to transplant? And so, working with Dr. Kalos's group, we started to employ things like bioreactor technologies, where you've got very controlled conditions and unique systems to actually uniformly grow up huge numbers of cells in a relatively short period of time that could then be applied into a clinical setting. And so we've really leveraged that variety of expertise within biomedical engineering in order to move our efforts forward. I would say, one other area that for me is really exciting is actually taking advantage of the diversity of expertise within our own faculty, actually, in veterinary medicine. In basic science research, we have a tendency to rely pretty heavily on mouse models of disease. And to be frank, mice are great models because they're very good for genetic manipulation and they're cost effective, but they often don't really represent human physiology or disease disease physiology very well, diseases that affect humans. And so to overcome those limitations, because ultimately we want models that are going to be very translatable, that are going to give us information that's going to translate directly into human application. And so in order to overcome the limitations of mouse models, we really we began to engage with our large animal veterinary experts within our faculty to try to see if we could take advantage of other animal models that might give us more insights into human disease states, or models that we could better test treatments that we had developed in the laboratory, so that we could better predict that something that we develop is going to actually be effective in a human with a particular disease. In this case, being, say, a severe skin injury. And so that's been really fascinating. We've now developed models in pigs and in horses and even in reindeer that have given us a huge number of new insights into tissue regeneration and how we might better enable tissue regeneration, a restoration of normal function to skin. And so that's sort of how Holly became part of our team, is that she's a board certified large animal surgeon. And so, in order for us to do any of this research in large animal models, we need someone like her with that expertise. And people with her expertise don't come along very often. So we were very eager to have her join the team. And she's done some incredible work in both horses and in reindeer, looking at how tissues regenerate, or in the case of horses, why tissues form such severe scar and tend not to regenerate at all. She's been a really excellent example of our ability to take advantage of people with different expertise, and to integrate that into our program in order to make us as a whole much better, and to really advance the quality of our science.
Hi, I'm Dr. Holly Sparks. I am a veterinarian and now a new faculty recruit as an assistant professor in the Faculty of Vet Med at the University of Calgary. So as a graduate of Dr. Biernaske's training program, I really have developed a strong foundation of stem cell biology and the mechanisms underlying poor healing response in tissues, and even regenerative medicine approaches aimed at improving outcomes after injury. And now I have the opportunity to really use those technologies in my own independent research program, where I'm looking at my clinical interest in veterinary medicine, which is actually improving outcomes after musculoskeletal injuries as well as after wounds, particularly in horses, but also really across species. So I think when I started my career, early in my career as a veterinarian, I really thought that healing was the ultimate goal after injury. And no matter what the tissue was, I thought we just wanted it to heal. And I quickly realized that that really wasn't enough, because often healing occurred through the production of scar tissue. And it's that scar tissue that can have really chronic, long-lasting problems across a variety of tissues, whether it be organs or musculoskeletal tissues like tendons and ligaments, as well as skin. And so really it was all very interconnected. And so I developed really a passionate wanting to understand why that happened, and also understand what we as clinicians could do to hopefully prevent that scar tissue from happening, and really encourage the body to regenerate more functional tissue instead of just repairing with scar. So the training that I received in Dr. Biernaske's program was really instrumental in beginning to understand that across tissues and across species. And I think a huge, part of that was really not only developing, sort of the understanding as a clinician how rigorous scientific exploration happens, but also understanding all of the tools that we have at our disposal to investigate these clinical questions, and ultimately to develop meaningful therapeutics to hopefully encourage improved outcomes. So, one of the great opportunities in a training program like I had the experience to be in Dr. Biernaske's lab, was really the benefit of having, so many experts working with me to develop those skills. So I had the great opportunity to have really a very diverse set of mentors as I worked through my training program, and having the knowledge now of how we can work with engineers and how we can work with other scientists, no matter what the species of interest and no matter what the tissue of interest, really toward the ultimate goal of improving healing, is incredibly impactful. And I think, that's shown really by sort of the diversity of careers that my colleagues have gone out into. I have colleagues that trained with me that are now human physicians, and some that are clinical veterinarians, some in industry, some in academia. So a wide variety of now experts in different fields. And also I continue to draw on this network of mentors across disciplines as I grow my career as a researcher myself. So, that's been incredibly valuable to me, especially starting a new faculty position in the time of COVID, where, we tend to be a bit isolated. And working from home, I had the great opportunity of developing even an international set of collaborators with a wide variety of interests, that if an idea for, a clinical problem and how to investigate a clinical problem in vet med comes up, I have a whole host of people that I can reach out to and discuss sort of ideas at how to approach that and really establish meaningful ways of exploring that. So that's been incredibly beneficial to me. And also, I think the fact that, we as veterinarians in this university, we have such an integrated program with the Cummings School of Medicine, that it's been a really great opportunity for me to see as a veterinarian the parallels in clinical challenges across species, whether they be human or veterinary species. So, being co-supervised during my training program by a human physician was really important for me to develop that deep understanding of the idea that we share the same problems and we can work together toward finding solutions for those clinical problems.
Looking forward, we're hoping to capitalize on this interdisciplinary collaboration that we've established across faculties in developing what we call the Center for Cell Therapy Translation here at the University of Calgary. And this is really the culmination of years of this collaborative work within our regenerative medicine group, which again spans 3 or 4 different faculties, but really taking advantage of these diverse expertise in order to enable better predictability of experimental treatments like cell therapies or like drug therapies that can restore tissue function through regeneration, and moving that from laboratory animal model experiments and realizing that in clinical settings. And so, by bringing together large animal expertise, as well as bioengineering, human clinical medicine, and stem cell biology, all of these things together towards a collective initiative, we hope to really change the face of regenerative medicine in Canada, and to make University of Calgary a hub for preclinical translational studies in this space.